Well, I don't want to give anything away, but the song is really why I show up. Welcome to the Film Board, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and we have a large, round, virtual table here tonight. We've got some old voices back. Well, one old voice, and I'm really excited about that. Mike Evans.
Greetings. How are you all?
I've missed you so much.
It's good to be here.
So much.
A little uncomfortable now.
And that's Andy Nelson.
Hi.
Hi, Andy.
Yes.
And we got Steve Sarmento.
Good evening, everyone.
And Tom Metz.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friend. And we're talking about, we're talking about Divergent tonight. Ooh. This may be our link-baitiest show ever.
We're just putting it right there. Right
I'm going to say it out loud. I'm very much looking forward to talking to you gentlemen about this film because I don't actually know why we would want to talk about this film.
Because of all the Divergence, Pete. The Divergence.
The future belongs to those who know where they belong.
You're nervous, aren't you?
Why would I be nervous? I'm just going to decide the rest of our lives.
You are different. If you don't fit into a category, they can't control you. They call it Divergent. You can't let them find out about you.
And what if they already know?
Then you're already dead. The system removes the threat of anyone exercising their independent will. Divergent threaten that system. It won't be safe until they're removed.
I know who you are. If you want to survive, follow me.
They're gonna kill me.
I'm not gonna let that happen.
You have to trust yourself. You're a poor blend of impulses and impurities. Don't try and define me.
Okay, so Divergence. It's if you haven't heard about it, you live under a rock. Divergence is, the new film. I assume somebody here has read the books.
That would be me. That would be Steve. I've read the first book, and I have a daughter who has read, I think, the trilogy twice and is just encouraging me to keep going. But I have read the first book, so I can. If we need to get into the area of film to book adaptation, I can address that.
I deeply hope we do. Because I think that I have to imagine something got lost in translation. Please, for the love of everything, tell me something is missing.
You mean like a plot?
Oh,
there you go.
I'm sorry.
Stake,
my bad.
Interest, care.
No.
So this is a book. Who wrote the book? It was
Veronica Roth.
Veronica Roth wrote these books, and
who actually had a small cameo in the film.
I did not see her. She was not wearing a tag. What was she?
My daughter pointed this out to me. The scene when the zip line, when there's the group of them on the roof. She's one of the Divergent, people on the roof.
No, the
in
Dauntless
that scene.
People on the roof.
Yeah, the Dauntless people up on the roof. When they load her, our main character into the zip line, she's up there apparently in that scene.
Oh, fantastic! So you couldn't actually pick her out of the lineup, is what you're saying here?
I've seen her, but I was, I'm not the 13-year-old fangirl that's just looking for everything in every sequence, like my daughter. So
So the book directed by Neil Burger. Written by
we've talked about him on the show before in The Illusionist.
We have, and that's why my heart is broken. But he's also Limitless, The Illusionist. And he wrote The Illusionist, which is another. One of the reasons we like. He wrote and directed that film, which is one of our very favorites. So
he adapted it.
Right. So that's Neil Burger. It was written by, now I don't know if we have talked about Evan Doherty. Do we know Evan Doherty and Vanessa Taylor?
No, I don't think so. I don't believe we have talked about them at all.
Well, I actually, yes, sure we do. Sure, we do. Well,
Snow White and the Huntsman.
Snow White and the Huntsman. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Steve and I just had a off.
Well, that does pique my curiosity though, because Evan Doherty. I mean that script was one of the Blacklist scripts from a few years back, and
Right.
I don't know how much it changed between the time that he wrote it and it when it ended up getting purchased and actually made by Rupert Sanders. But
It must have been a lot.
yeah, I'm guessing so. But yeah, Evan Doherty is the one who is credited with the screen story, and then screenplay credit with John Lee Hancock and Hossein Amini on that. So yeah, I'm guessing it changed quite a bit before they made that. So okay, that's cool. I like him.
Okay.
And I'm seeing Vanessa Taylor has some credits on Game of Thrones
Yes.
as producer and writer. So
there's
interesting.
something. There's something.
Something that's disappointing you, I sense.
I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. I'm just saying my world is rocked right now, just a little bit. And Shailene Woodley.
I have to write down
Shailene, yeah.
Shailene, is it Shailene?
Shailene, yeah.
Shailene Woodley, we know her from The Descendants, Spectacular Now, and The Secret Life of an American Teenager. I didn't see that. Yeah.
That's a TV show, right?
Is it? I don't know.
I think it's on.
Yeah, it's a TV series.
Oh,
right.
good. Well, I haven't seen any of that.
Right.
Yeah. But she is also in The Fault in Our Stars, which has gotten some initial strong praise, mostly based on the strength of the novel, the John Green novel, which is fantastic. So interesting to see where that comes out. So this is the film. Would somebody please just set up what the film is about? And usually we don't start this way. Usually we just jump right in. But I would love somebody to take a stab at telling me what the film is about.
Are you talking about plot summary, or you want something more grand and thematic?
Maybe we'll get there, but I would love just a plot summary.
Diet Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
No, this is your typical. Right now, there's a lot of these young adult literature novels that are set in sort of a dystopian future where society has collapsed and there are some new rules that are imposed. And that's where we get a lot of these comparisons to the Hunger Games. In this case, we're set in Chicago. At some time in the future, some catastrophic event has occurred, and the city has now built a wall to separate itself from whatever is outside. Which is not told what is going on out there. There's apparently some threat or something because we have a wall to protect the city, and to balance society. There's been a decision made to break people into, or divide them into 5 different what are called factions. And so there's a selection process, but each faction represents a specific personality type or trait. So you have the Dauntless, who are the protectors of the city. They are brave. They are fearless. You have the Erudite, who are the scholars that value knowledge. You have Amity, who, as we see, sort of are an agricultural group, but it's about, I think it's friendship and giving.
They seem like happy farmers.
Yeah, happy farmers. There's abnegation, which is where our heroine starts off, and that is the selfless group. Very less concerned about the self and more about what you're doing for others. And there's candor, which are those that value truth and will speak truth, so they see things in very black and white, simplistic terms. And did I miss one?
Did you talk about the smart people?
Dauntless, Erudite.
The erudites, you said those?
Yeah, you did Erudite.
Okay.
You started with Dauntless, right?
Yeah, start with Dauntless, abnegation, candor, amity.
And then there's
abnegation.
factionless.
Oh, then there's the factionless, which are those that have either, for various reasons that we learn in the movie, that have lost their faction, sort of are the cast-offs in society. So we have a story of a character who's in abnegation and who goes through this selection process and learns that she is sort of uncategorizable. She is divergent. She doesn't fit into any one of these categories, and that is a threat to this society. These divergents, because they're not easily categorized. They're a threat, and we see what happens as she tries to find a place, and we learn about this society, and particularly about the Dauntless faction, because that's where she is chosen to go. So we see a lot of what that she chooses to go. Yes. So that's I think
good work, Steve.
Overall,
that was fantastic.
So,
That was fantastic. And so my next question. So you guys care about all that, right?
Well, okay. Let me say
in the
this.
beginning, I did.
Now I'm gonna leap to what the grander theme is, and I think why this became a very successful young adult novel is everyone here can remember what it's like in high school, and about every single high school film will start off with the new kid to school. Let me introduce you to the different cliques or groups. Oh, there's the sports, there's the jocks. Oh, those are the stoners and burnouts, or those are we get those same things in a typical high school teen comedy movie or teen drama where we see the different groups, and I think that's what this has done. Yes,
Steve,
what?
As a young teenage girl, sometimes I don't feel like I fit into any of those groups. And I'm actually not making fun. I'm trying to help your analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let a group define you.
Or sometimes I feel like
yourself.
I fit in all of they
Exactly.
won't let me be in all of them.
Exactly. And that's what I think this, is the draw to this story of we have as a father of two daughters, a story like this, and then having seen this past winter Frozen, these films that have these strong female leads that don't let society define them, that don't depend on the boy to save them, that have these strong roles. I'm really excited and happy to see that we're getting more and more of these positive, strong female role models for young girls, that they can be in charge, they can be assertive, and that is something that's being presented as a positive thing.
Agreed.
So basically, this is a literary and movie interpretation of the fathers to the daughters saying, "Because I told you so."
I would say, Steve, to your point, I don't have a problem with any of that. And also, as a father of a daughter who is ravenous and really flummoxed about why I didn't like this movie, she's ravenous about these books. She loves them. And, I have no problem with the strong female characters. I love that. I love what they sort of represent. And I actually love these sorts of stories. I mean, it took me a long time to come around to the Hunger Games. But I ended up really quite liking it, particularly in the most recent one. I thought it was it's becoming a much more interesting tale. And now that I've read the books, the problem I have with this one, and I would say to your point, I also saw Clueless, and you're exactly right. It totally fits the template. But these high school comedy movies, these high school sort of selection process movies, there are stakes that come at the end of, like, there is usually a metaphor that leads to some dramatic turning point, right? There is something at stake by having this selection process. Even if we go back to Harry Potter and the hat selection, and we go back to the Hunger Games and the selection, this one, they removed all the layers of drama to its most rudimentary. Are you smart and clever? Are you creative and loving? Do you tell the truth a lot? Are you tough, and do you climb bridges? Like, they took it to its very raw personality traits. And then they removed the stakes even further. Now they say you take the test, but you know what? If you take the test, you don't even really have to follow what the test says. Like, there isn't even any real tension about the test. She has all this manufactured tension about how, oh my gosh, I have to do what the test says. And then they say, you don't really have to do what the test says. You just cut your hand and drop the blood, and then you're fine. You pick your house. It's fine. Go for it. There is no tension at all for most of the film. And I found that positively tedious. Now, my comment, and then I'll hang it up because I want to hear more, but I think that's a flaw of an immature writer writing an immature story. And I think the film did not adequately take the story and improve upon it to the point of actually making something that might have been full of cinematic or dramatic tension in a way that would hold our interest. I find it an empty shell of a film for most of it, and that was very frustrating to me. And since I haven't read the book, I'm really speculating, but that's my problem with it. I see movies that star the casts of Abercrombie and Fitch ad campaigns. Like I get it. And I'm usually fine with it. But this one, the film structurally doesn't hold water. That's where I am.
So clearly, Pete, you would be in the candor faction.
Well, okay. So, and this was one of my struggles with of having read the book, of having to separate out. And I'm really interested to sort of hear that from you, Pete, because it's something that I know what was missing from what was in the book. And I thought, okay, I know this is missing. So I feel like there's something that's not quite there, speaking just about the selection process. So I'm feeling like a little shortchanged. It was similar to how I felt about, you talked about Harry Potter. In the third film, Prisoner of Azkaban. In the book, there's a whole subplot about Harry's father and Sirius Black and how they were the ones that created the map, and that was totally missing from the movie. And I thought it adds so much to that, to really Harry's connection to his father. And it wasn't in the film, and the film still works, and I love that film, but it always, there's this hole there for me. And I felt the same thing here, because in the book there's a lot more explanation about the test and the selection process, and I felt it was there, it was missing, and I was wondering, for someone that hadn't seen the film, hadn't read the book, just seen the film, if there was some confusion or loss of, why is she choosing Dauntless? What's the reason for that? Because I have the knowledge of what's in the book, and I felt they could have done a little bit more. And now I'm hearing from you that you feel that there is sort of the stakes missing of you choose it, but what is she risking?
Well, and I would just add to that before just a bigger question, which is, why would a post-apocalyptic, kind of war-torn society in the, rebuilding themselves come up with such an incredibly stupid system for categorizing people? I'll leave it at that. It's ridiculous.
I would like to offer as someone else who has not read the books, first I would like to go on the record and said that I kind of liked the film. I really did. I might be next to Steve as far as I thought it was the first thing that I said that I thought was it was very diverting, and that's a shame. And I immediately said, don't say that on the podcast, and I just said it. For me, I don't necessarily agree with. I think the problem with it is the metaphor gets messy, but there's still a lot of feeling behind it for me, in the way that the metaphor becomes, you have to fit into this one thing and you can't be something else. Okay. People, especially young kids, are trying to figure themselves out. They don't want to do that. And then also, though, with Pete, to your point, which did seem weird at first, that you can just switch and change. Also, I thought she had a lot of pressure or feeling or worry about displeasing her parents. Her parents, which seemed like Nation born and bred, and maybe that didn't turn out to be the case, but that I felt like it wasn't necessarily manufactured. I felt like it was a very messy amount of pressure and worry and fear and decision that really spoke to me of sort of being a teenager, which I kind of enjoyed. I do agree that it is a little weird. The metaphor does break down. I also think that maybe the idea of breaking society down into 5 factions doesn't really work that well past the high school metaphor, but also, as we learn, the whole thing is about control. And in that way, it works very well. So I was able to, and I think maybe I found the film so agreeable and so much, I was able to meet it more than halfway and look over some of the overarching problems with it and enjoy it for what it did.
Well, I'd like to to just touch on one thing that I felt that it was near the end of the movie that I realized that was disappointing, and let me just throw it out there and we can see what you guys think about it. Is that the whole idea
spoiling?
of so do your spoilers disclaimer, right?
Spoilers.
Tom, don't you have a spoiler song? Isn't there a spoiler alert song?
There should
Put on your earmuffs. We're about to ruin the movie. All right. That was.
I love that. So, the whole idea of the Divergent, right? I mean, so if you go by the trailer, and I may be the only one who got sucked in that way, but on the trailer, but it made it look like they were like superpowered, like there's some sort of supernatural or magical or superpower. That's what they are, and they're hiding it or whatever. Oh. And at least that's what I got out of the trailer, right? So you get in there.
Amen. Sing it, brother.
And they're so worried about it, right? There's so much danger to it, and at the end of the movie, all it is okay. They're resistant to the mind control drugs, which at least in the first part of it, normal society, they're resistant to the mind. Let me figure out what your faction's going to be drug. I mean, it didn't even seem like if you are a Divergent, it would really have any effect on society. I mean, given on the level of what the factions are, it's just simply, sorting people into things that they do best, or where they want to be. And so you take this little whatever and you're able to realize it's a simulation and break out of it. Okay, but how is that even really a threat? Now, I mean, it's a threat to the secondary plot, which is the whole, erudite political thing or whatever, right? But if you just take the way the society is built on the surface, there's no reason that the Divergence would, at least in my mind, the way they presented it, would even be a threat. It was a complete letdown in that regard of what a Divergent is like. You're like, oh, okay, and like you said, you can already choose your own path. So someone who tests like 3 or 4 of them in this little test that has no bearing on the selection, and then if you're Divergent, as we've seen, the ones that we saw else in the movie, they go and they do their thing. They kind of hang out,
right?
And they are politicians or they're policemen or whatever. So I didn't understand even the threat. They didn't explain the threat very well, because literally I thought they were like superpowered people and they would like rip the whole society apart. But it's just like, hey, we're free spirits.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it.
I think that's the point, as you say, is
it's about
free spirits. If every faction has their role to play in society, and you don't fit into one of those, and you're sort of masking yourself in one of those, then you risk sort of subverting or undermining what that function in society is. If erudite they're supposed to be studious and learning, and you start questioning that knowledge, or if you're supposed to be selfless and you start to become selfish, or if you're supposed to be brave and you back down when or question your orders of marching into battle to defend the city because you're like, well, I'm supposed to be brave, but this seems kind of questionable. Then it risks that societal structure falling apart. And I think I agree, Mike, that it's, again, there's lot.
It's clunky, but
yeah,
it's there.
Yes.
Well, okay, so that
they do set up that I mean, there are inherent risks with picking something outside of what you're supposed to pick based on your test. I mean, if your test says you should be abnegation but you choose dauntless, I mean, they put all of those people through a test, and if you don't pass all those tests that they put you through, then you end up factionless, and then you're essentially you're in the caste system that we have here, you're considered dirt, and nobody wants any part of that.
But we didn't know that there was
that. Well, I want to clarify that point, and maybe someone who's read the book could be more clear about that.
I thought that was perfectly clear in the movie, though.
No. I got the impression that was something new that they had just implemented.
No,
that's right. No. That's what that was very clear in the movie, that there was no understanding when she decided to go dauntless. She had no idea that there were tests. More importantly, they kept talking about how the fact that the Biggest Loser line,
where they're going to drop people off the thing, just cast them. You can't go back to your old place. We're just going to dump you in the alley.
Yeah.
Was something that they had just implemented.
Well,
Yeah, and
I
so
guess
that-
I guess the test that was there. You're right about that, but the test that was there was by picking Dauntless. The test was if you can't climb up to this speeding train and jump on and then jump off onto the roof, then you're not going to be a Dauntless, and then you will be factionless.
Andy, that is not a fair thing to say because she did not know that test existed. She did not know that happened.
I'm not talking about the test later. I'm talking about on the train.
No, I'm telling you on the
She
train.
said-
When she made the choice about becoming Dauntless, she did not know that she was going to have to climb a bridge embankment and jump off a train.
but my guess is that there's probably something set up in all the different factions where if you don't do that, if you choose something outside of your faction that you're likely not really set up for, that there's probably something there that could bump you out and make you factionless.
And I'm saying
that was my
speculation.
assumption. But I'm speculating in this world that they present me with, and that to me makes perfect sense.
Well, and here's my problem with it, because by relying on speculation in this case, there is no foundation for the character's actions, and that gets back to my point about no stakes. Because there was no setup for me to think that there were any stakes at what would happen for her, depending on what faction she chose. There's no reason to believe, whatever comes next is going to be sort of more intense, or for me to worry about her or care about her, because they just didn't set it up.
If they had set that up before, if that had been part of the stakes of the choosing,
that would have made the choosing more interesting.
Then you're like, oh, you better get that right.
Yeah, make it right, because if you choose wrong,
if you choose erudite, there's going to be a test.
I kind of disagree, to be honest, about Dauntless, and I don't think it's an assumption. I think it's just sort of seeing the stakes that are in front of. Wait, can I say one thing that's a sidebar, real quick? Because in my life, it's very much about what exactly we're talking about. But in my life, like, I would love to be Dauntless, but I'm so not. And I loved going on the walk with Charlize Woodley. What's her name? Shailene Woodley. Of when she's like, Dauntless, let's do this. And then they're all sprinting down the street, all being young and amazing and like giving each other high fives. And I was like, and that's where I would immediately turn around because I'm too winded.
Okay,
like I never would have gotten to be like, can I climb up this thing? I was like, yep, and there we go, and there's that, and now I'm done. And guess what sounds great? Amity, because I can farm without getting a cramp.
Tom, you'll be happy to know that you are present in the book. In the book, when they're running to catch the train, there's one boy that can't keep up, and he doesn't catch the train, gets left behind, and I think there's and I don't have the book in front of me. I think there's some discussion of what happens to him. Well, he's
factionless.
He's going to become factionless. And as far as the stakes, and I was surprised I guess because it's PG-13, they had to cut this. When they do make that jump from the train to the rooftop, there is one girl that doesn't make the leap and falls short.
Oh, wow.
And ends up, all over the pavement. So in the book, there are some of those heightened stakes, and I was surprised because I'll agree. There's not as much, that I saw based on, being familiar with the book of the stakes of what is she really risking. And I agree with Andy that he's keying into some of those pieces there, but it perhaps could have been a little bit more upfront, so they wouldn't have to be, I'm assuming this, but it could have been maybe a little bit more explicit about some of those things. They briefly introduced the factionless, but they don't really explain how they ended up that way. And that's where you have to balance that exposition of, do we really need voiceover or this expositional scene to explain the rules of the world, or can we, move the plot along, and will people come along for that?
You know what, Steve? I think that was okay.
Can I finish? I apologize. Can I? Because after the dumb sidebar, the real thing that I wanted to say was
there was more.
It was the longest sidebar in history. You probably forgot there was a bar. The original thing that I was really trying to say was, it wasn't an assumption. Like, you're jumping into the coolest kids, the Dauntless. They arrive jumping off of trains. So to not think that you're going to have to be very physically fit, and fearless, like, the idea of saying that that we didn't have any idea what the stakes would be, that she never knew what she was getting into. I think that their entrance was that of these guys are badasses and they're crazy.
Yeah, but you got to remember this isn't like Hunger Games where these and you know, making my assumption from that movie where these things are like segregated out, right? These are their police officers. They see them every day. It's an integrated society.
But we saw them climbing buildings for fun.
We saw them.
Like,
You know what, I
so
agree
you'd
with
assume
that.
in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But assume. I guess maybe I'm uncomfortable with the idea of assumption because it sounds like that Steve and I are doing too much work to get there. I felt like they set it up like if you're dauntless, you're fine doing anything.
Well, and we don't know if you're a younger person, if you're allowed to observe the choosings, the selections. You know, we don't know that they have any idea what's going on, or if they're prepared at all, right? For it, they're like older brothers and things. When they get selected, do they know how this process goes or not? Right?
Well, there was only the kids and their parents in that room.
Right, but again, they don't get shipped off to Hogwarts, and you never see them again, right? I mean, it's like he's dauntless, but now he's patrolling the street or whatever. I mean, it's not like they can't. They even showed that she went and visited her brother over an erudite, so it's not they couldn't talk.
To be fair, that was kind of frowned upon.
No, but it wasn't. But it wasn't like, you know, you're not allowed to do that. It was more of like, you know, you're in the middle of training.
I agree with that.
What are you doing? And there's also the leadership is compromised. So, you know, the things like that. It doesn't seem like you know, that she would be completely. You realize later that she shouldn't be completely in the dark about what it would mean to be that other faction.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would say to Tom's point too that you know I agree, and I think it is a fair assumption because they did set up that this is a very physical thing, and you wouldn't make that choice. But my response really was to Andy's point about the test, and I do think that had she known up front, had all the chosen known up front that, you know what, if you choose wrong, if you screw up, if you're not if you weren't born into this, if you decided to jump ship, then there are stakes. That would have improved that experience for me. That was really my point.
So there's a real reason why you would want to go with what the test told you.
Right.
But isn't the like part of the new, like when Jai Courtney, whatever, when he's saying these new things, that's partly because he and the always not believable Mekhi Phifer. Sorry, Mekhi. I'm sure he's a listener. Every time he comes on screen in every film, I go, "Oh, there's Mekhi Phifer." He's the opposite of like losing me in a movie. But it's because
Tom, tell me what his character's name is.
Mekhi Phifer.
Mekhi Phifer.
Yeah. He was Mekhi Dauntless. Was
Matt.
I thought that part of these new things and these new tests and everything was because now they're in bed with erudite.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
And so they're all like, so the reason that they didn't know that these stakes were is because maybe they weren't. It's because erudite is finally making their big move and they have some of their monkeys in, their armed people in, you know, Dauntless doing their bidding for them.
Right. I think there's a scene where I think it's when they first start fighting when Eric, who's, you know, he says, you know, it's going to be till someone, you know, gives up, or, you know, and that's when Four says to him, well, those weren't the rules before, you know, and basically hints that, you know, if that was, you know, under these rules that Eric probably wouldn't have made it through these more stricter rules. So there's that, which I like that dynamic. There's just a few little jabs back and forth early on between Eric and Four, particularly with Capture the Flag of like, oh, you're picking the weakest, so you've got a reason to, you know, you've got an excuse for when you lose. And he's like, yeah, something sort of like that. And it's this sense of when I beat you with who you think are the weak people, you know, how are you going to feel about that?
I want to comment on that. When I was in the earlier part of the movie, when they were doing that, I was actually sold. My brain was sold on the fact that they were doing that to generate fear, like, and they wanted to. Because the kind of the whole deal of Dauntless is fearless, right?
Right.
So they wanted to, like, you bring them in and you sort of start immediately disrupting what their expectations might have been of what they're supposed to do. Like, okay, we join up, everyone's going to be, slap high fives, we're awesome, we're going to get some food, live in a cave, and everything's going to be great. And they start just disrupting all their expectations in very traumatic and in a lot of ways fearful ways to see how they're going to react. Like their whole thing is to generate fear and see how these people react to it, because the whole idea of Dauntless is to overcome your fears, right? And so early on, I thought that's what they were doing. Like they're throwing these curveballs at these initiates to see how they're going to handle it. It wasn't until later that you realize it was this agenda that they were in developing. Eric was not playing the bad cop role for as good cop in a way. Literally, they're off the rails and something much, much worse. But early on, I thought it was like maybe this is how they do it, and maybe erudite. They're constantly testing their intellectual confidence or things like that, where to make sure that they want to be here, right? You can't just join up because you're physically fit. You have to actually be able to overcome your fears. Except that as Steve said, he was the one that would make sense, except that 4 was immediately like, wait, what are we doing? Well, but remember, 4 was also abnegation to begin with.
Right, but he's been there. I mean, I think, and maybe Tom, is just more attuned and a more attentive viewer and noticed these little subtleties.
I'm Divergent.
But yeah, exactly. That's really what and that's what, based on the book, based on that other background knowledge that I have, and I'm glad to see that, it's interesting to me to see whether some people pick up on it and some don't. And I think the fact that some don't, speaks to that there are some flaws in this film. That it's not quite clear of that this is really, Eric and Mekhi Phifer are taking this Dauntless in a new direction. I think that becomes clearer later on. But I think, in the book, it's much clearer, between Eric and 4, and they maybe could have done a little bit more. And again, I think that's where the film sort of shortchanged on the world building up front, and they did spend a lot of time sort of in the training sequence. And I thought there's some character development going on here, but if we don't balance that with some of the world building, and again, seeing what they sort of left out, I felt, is there enough here for people to latch onto? And I think it's bearing out some of my concerns and fears that there are people that aren't quite getting some of that because they skimped out on some of the world building up front to get things moving, and maybe a little bit too much time. And they did. I mean, it's a hefty book. There's still big chunks that are cut out during training and some of that character development pieces. But I really felt like that front end, they could have beefed that up just a little bit more. And I think then maybe, Mike, you wouldn't have some of those questions. And it's.
Do you think the erudites had to read a book really fast?
Yeah, exactly, right.
And this one poor kid only got to chapter 12, and they're like, "You're factionless,"
and they drop him off a bridge.
Amity has to make a plant grow within 2 days, and if it doesn't, you're done. But it's like the part was that this is the forced perspective, right? This is we're seeing. We're experiencing this thing through her eyes, because that's our perspective. We have no other information, right? It's very common, right? Yes. So it's common. It's expected that we are in that same state of confusion as the main character is during the first part of the movie. Yeah, we don't understand why there's a big pit and they're fighting, and we don't understand why they have the levels and things like that. Until later on, when they're like, you start realizing that this is going, more off the rails than. Like I said, I was convincing myself that it was just, placing a rational fear and seeing how they react. Mm-hmm. And my assumption was that all the other factions did, something similar, and because they don't really tell you, they sort of make you assume, right? And maybe that was on purpose. Maybe it was they don't tell you how the factionalists got there. They don't tell you what their purpose is, other than just existing. I mean, they don't.
I think that one. I let that one go, knowing, and this is an assumption that I sort of granted myself, knowing that this is a trilogy. The few glimpses we get of the factionless in action, the gloomy stares over some burning trash, it made me. That actually built some suspense for me to look forward to the second movie and or the second book or whatever answers that question. Like that was one that I thought, okay, they're going to let that hang out there. There were no there's nothing at stake for me to care about the factionless yet. And right. So I can let that hang. Ultimately the transition from all this rot about, choosing which faction and into the actual story, which, to me was the more interesting part. And I thought, I feel like it was shortchanged. By all of this nonsense about that I think they could have just executed and gotten us into the motion of the narrative more quickly.
Do you not need to see her, because it is kind of an origin story, unlike Katniss, who was kind of really good at everything already? She, coming from abnegation, I still can't say that word, needs to learn how to become a true warrior and everything, because obviously she's going to end up saving the world. Does you wanted all that to be, that didn't do anything for you?
Well, I was just so disappointed in that sequence that I could have used less of that. Had they done it better, maybe I would have enjoyed it more.
Which
had it been a
sequence?
Team America World Police kind of a montage, I probably would have been happier.
You mean the sequence of all of her training and all
of
that
her
kind of
training?
stuff?
Yeah, just get through it because they weren't doing it well.
I will tell you this is I think what they executed perfectly on was sort of her physical acting and the way that she was developing throughout the movie, right? Her physical confidence, like you could see the way she was acting early on. She was very, she'd shrink from things like that, and the normal stuff, up to the point where at the end of the movie, when she's standing there in front of those erudites, right? And she basically kicks like three of their butts, and she looks like she's this like roided up super killer, right? So I thought they did a very good job of sort of at least ending at that point where she was dauntless by the end of the movie. No doubt about it.
I didn't get that at all.
That's what
I felt like she was totally a fish out of water the whole time. I didn't buy her. I didn't buy her as the character at all. I thought it was horribly miscast.
Interesting.
Wow.
I thought she was.
I don't disagree.
No.
Yeah, no. I don't disagree that there's some parts of it that she could not pull. The character could not pull off what I think they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Just because physically she wasn't moving the right way. But that last scene where they're in the little control room and she's sitting around those, and she just like destroys them, or like and then she's with her like family, and they're all looking at her like this, and she's like, "What?" And I thought that at the end point they'd gotten there, but through most of the movie, I would agree with you, Pete.
Yeah,
I love this because I
terrible.
really have a different view. Like she was what made this movie work for me.
Yeah,
The flowing hair in the wind.
I thought she was just really. I thought she was cool and relatable and not too pretty and not too.
Yeah,
I just thought she was really cool. I was like,
and also she came across as somebody really struggling to find her place, and as a 16-year-old trying to fit in, I really bought into that with her, and as she was trying to kind of be a part of this group that she desperately wanted to be a part of, even though she really didn't know who she was and she was trying to figure all that out. That kind of self-exploration, I think, is what really sold that for me, particularly in the very long training hour of the film, which did for me slow down quite a bit. But she's the thing that always, through the entire film, really just kept me going, and I really
I completely agree. Yeah,
the whole time I was thinking, God, this was a mix-up in casting. The Triss should have been played by Zoe Kravitz, who I think could have pulled off a much more diminutive to strength.
Who's Zoe Kravitz?
She was her friend.
She was
Christine.
her friend.
Oh,
that
character is the worst.
Yeah, really
I know the character is the worst, but I was placing her, the actress, in place of Triss the entire time.
No. Really?
Yeah,
Just
I
because
really,
of like
she
how
was
she
just
holds herself. Or?
clumsy. She was just. This was not a role for Shailene Woodley. This was not her role. I think she's out of place.
You are so wrong. You are so wrong.
I think you're wrong too. This is a real. We are at Film Buddies Loggerheads. sorry, guys. Someone had to say it. We're at Film Buddies Loggerheads.
Who's candor now, traitor?
Right. I liked it at one point. Candor just meant rude.
Yeah,
rude and sarcastic and annoying.
It all turns into the Lord of the Flies eventually.
Can I bring up a funny thing that both my wife and I watched the movie with asked this question at the end of the movie. We asked, so they got the wall up to protect them from but the farmers go outside the wall.
Yes.
And so
again, excellent planning.
Really.
Well, I'm
Couldn't they have moved the wall a little farther out?
Because the whole thing is about control, I'm assuming that there's not a real threat.
No. So that's the 1984 aspect that I got.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's the unseen enemy that we must always be braced against. And you must sacrifice because we need you sacrifice your individuality and your freedom, some of your freedom, because we have to stay strong against this unseen enemy.
But you're right, though, that everyone just buys that, and we're like, let's have the friendly people go out and farm.
The entire Amity thing, just go out there in the farm, and they even mention it in the movie. They're like, well, the farms? He goes, no, beyond the farms, out further,
right,
is where they are, and you're like, what? But okay, but you can maybe buy that because they're like the government leadership groups just kind of have everyone under their thumb. But that was a big thing. It's like they let the Amity people go out every day. And I hope they come back. I hope the bad guys don't get them because the Dauntless people don't go out with them. They stay on the wall.
Oh well, I'm trying to recall, and again, it's not stated in the film, and that is one of those things. But as we see they're heading out on the train, we'll find out. But since we were discussing casting, I thought maybe we could talk about some of the other other characters. Yes. We've touched on them briefly and sort of the casting of some of them, because to me it's just hilarious watching Shailene Woodley, who was just tremendous in The Spectacular Now with Miles Teller, and they're in this together, and he is just a complete jerk in this film. He's the character of Peter, and then her brother Caleb is I don't have his name.
Ansel Elgort.
He's her love interest in Fault Beneath Our Stars.
Right.
So it's this bizarre love triangle that comes to crossroads in Divergent. But it's like, it's the millennial, brat pack sort of, forming that we're seeing here with they're in films together. But I have to say, I was really excited about the casting of Theo James as Four. I thought he just did, again, I'm bringing what I, read in the book to that character, and in the screening we saw, there were some comic moments, there were some laughs just between the tension he had with Tris that I was excited to see just the way that played out, and I thought he just brought how that character was portrayed in the book. He really brought to the screen there's some amount of silence to that character and mystery that I thought just came across, helped carry that film.
I thought Theo James. I thought that character 4 was the best acted one of the movie. In my opinion,
I would agree with that.
Because the part you.
How do you like me now?
Well, yeah, I know. The part you learn later is that he was abnegation, right? Which is why, kind of in your brain, that's why he was helping. He was still dauntless, but he was kind of helping people. So he had that I'm going to help you, like DNA or whatever. But again, I still don't understand. You find out he's divergent. So apparently, having five tattoos on your whole back doesn't give off anything to anybody.
Nobody got that, right?
Yeah.
Really?
That was a little weird that nobody else has seen his tattoos,
right?
Or even the tattoo artist.
It's like he doesn't take a shower, like nothing keeps anyone off to anyone. That hey, those look familiar. Those other 4 things.
I get he's like a never nude. He just can't. He can't do it.
I would have gotten a tattoo that said "not divergent." That would throw everyone off.
Because if they would ask, then you just point to it and say, "Look, I'm not Divergent.
I'm totally not Divergent. Tell me what you guys thought about the execution of the mind control part, and this is, I guess, speaking specifically of Kate Winslet as the big bad.
Clumsy.
You mean giving them shots and or making them?
Yeah, kind of the whole thing. Her, she sort of executes this like the big mind
the head of the
control
erudites
takeover.
is going to take over, destroy the abnegation, who is essentially the government, because the erudites want to be the government,
right,
and rule.
But more importantly, the part I missed, and I don't know if it was just breezed over, but the part I missed greatly was why the Dauntless leadership would basically turn their entire faction over to the erudites to be robot controlled. I don't understand what the benefit is.
That was a big leap for me, and I immediately went to that Jai Courtney and the always amazing Mekhi Phifer were power hungry and were promised something.
Okay, but you're the leadership of a faction.
Far.
You're the leadership of basically the entire military already. What benefit do they get?
Exactly. Yeah.
The only thing I could think of, and it's not supported by anything I could see in the movie, was that they had the mind control stuff already done, but they weren't under robot control. They were just doing their thing.
I thought they were just power hungry.
I mean, but when you do the cost benefit analysis, I guess of it, right? You're going to turn over your entire faction to be robots, because that's what they're going to be from then on, is robots, right? And you're going to wipe out a whole other faction, and then, I mean, literally, I'm not that smart, so it's like, you connect the dots. What are they going to do with this now army? And I'm not robot controlled. Even though I'm a leader, I'm not robot controlled, but they've got all of my guys robot controlled. So, why would they need me anymore?
Well, the question to that,
why do they? Mekhi Phifer and Jai Courtney are supposed to be smart guys.
But the question is, why do they even need to go to that place where they're putting them under the mind control if the Dauntless are supposed to follow the leadership anyway?
Very good point.
Why do they have to put them in mind control? Why don't they just say, look, it's tough, go out and kill all the abnegations? Because
you got that from 4, is that part of one of their roles is also like intelligence. So I get the like FBI, I guess you would say. So maybe it's a because if they're brewing up all these rumors, the erudites, right? It may not hold up if detectives start actually investigating what's going on, like the badness. They probably can't convince them to do the same level of mass slaughter.
Right. Well, if you go back to when the factions are introduced, they talk about the Dauntless as being the protectors, but they're also brave to protect those that can't protect themselves.
Right.
So it's not that they're just brutal militia. That's what Jai Courtney and Mekhi Phifer are turning it into. But the intent of Dauntless is to be there to protect those and help, be that force to protect those that can't do that. So to prevent the
police.
Right, the police, but it's now being turned into something that's more brutal. So it's like, why they wouldn't just, unless they were under mind control, why would they just, shoot helpless people? Because that's not what Dauntless is about. It's about being brave and standing up and being a protector, not just, blatant abuse of power because we can get away with it. They're not brutal, and that's what.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that got me in the beginning. Sorry, that's the other thing that got me in the beginning when they were doing the initiation, and you have to be physical, right? You have to do the thing where you have to beat up people, you have to do the jumps or whatever. Like the jump into the pit is a conquer your fear type of thing. It's not
leap of faith.
Right, but it's conquer your fear. It's not well, okay, maybe leap of faith is better, but it's not a test of brutality where you start seeing the guys are weeding out the weak, and so they have like I said, the Biggest Loser line where they drop people off that seems to be new, right? I don't get the impression, or what I read from that is that it's not normal that they would dump a third of their initiates to factionless because they can't be brutal enough or physical enough. Like there's places within Dauntless for people who aren't necessarily like muscled up meatheads, right?
Someone's got to scrub the toilets.
Yeah, well, effectively, right? I mean, there's
and I think until
ironically,
now,
Dauntless has the dirtiest toilets of every faction.
well, it's because they're dauntless.
Right.
Well, you see
They're not afraid.
They're not afraid. Yeah.
Right.
But
you see characters like Maggie Q, who's the tattoo artist. So I mean, she's
God,
not
was she wasted in this film?
Well, yeah, but I can,
I'm guessing it's because of what's going to happen in
what's
the next
coming next.
Yeah.
But you see the established Dauntless, those that have been around a while. They're not, like Eric and the nameless Mekhi Phifer, who are, clearly the bullying kind. That they're looking for people like Peter, who are just willing to, be bullies and take advantage of the weak. Whereas that's not what really Dauntless is about.
Or Molly.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. And you get the feel that but you don't get that until later, right? I mean,
right.
I still feel that there's there was this thing I was hoping that they were going to do, and I found out they didn't. When they introduced the 5, and they're all positive descriptions of each of the factions, right? Because so it automatically implies that there's a 180-degree thing that can be associated, a human nature attribute that can be associated with them. Like, you have erudites intelligent. Well, like you could go the opposite as condescension. It's the dark side of each one of those factions.
Sure.
And that's what I was hoping that they were going to like explore. It's like, and even erudite trying to do the power grab. It's like, it's maybe the only thing I could think of is if like the opposite of the intelligence side is paranoia, right? So you throw all the really intelligent people, and over time, over generations, basically they're going to be like paranoid of everyone else around them, or things like that.
Or it's ego. We're better than everybody else because we're smarter than everybody else. We know better than anybody could. Yeah.
Well, and that I think is what we're seeing happen, but they didn't really explore it in any sort of overt way to make it any way
They made it
interesting.
look like she was like it was a her thing, like it was just what's her name? Kate Winslet's character. The head of the erudite. It was her thing. Maybe it was even almost like a personal thing against the head of the abnegation guy or whatever, right? Or she just wanted a little bit more power, but it wasn't that. I mean, you kind of got a little bit from Caleb when he was over there and he was kind of talking down to his sister. You kind of got the feeling that you could see that's the dark side of that faction, right?
Yeah.
All right.
But that's not why they were doing it.
So you guys who liked the end, jump in. What is it that like you liked the thing? Because I couldn't get over it feeling like the worst sort of Star Trek and insurrection. Like I couldn't get past it.
I don't know what any of those words mean.
Which part are you talking about? You're talking about the big revolution that occurs?
Yeah,
or are you talking about
revolution.
we're riding on a train towards the horizon?
No, the big revolution. The riding on a train.
Does that train go around all the time, or does it stop?
It just goes straight through the wall. There's no door in the wall, actually. It just goes through the wall. Just crashes into the wall.
But
it's like the Kool-Aid
when
Man.
But she said when the train hits the stop, you got to jump. So I was confused.
Oh, yeah, you better.
That train is always going past that building.
It's the worst train ever.
Right.
That's the worst job in the faction list, is to drive that dumb train, that dumb 2-car train that only people jump on and jump off. You never stop. You never stop.
And they never get on at a stop. Right.
Yeah,
they always climb. People are always climbing on the bridges.
He is so hungry. Like sometimes they throw sandwiches. Amity does. Amity does.
All right, so Andy, come on. I know you loved it. Tell me why.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I connected with her character, and once we got through the training period of the film, I just got into the story and the losing her parents. I really kind of enjoyed. I kind of connected with that. I don't say enjoyed her losing her parents, but I mean, I just connected with her, and I enjoyed the way that the story was going. I mean, maybe it's just that I kind of, when I watched it, I kind of connected with my teen self, and I was just able to kind of get into that mindset of the cliques and trying to find a way for these people to all come together and break out of the system. I mean, it's not like it's a story that hasn't been, we haven't explored this sort of story before. It's not mind-blowingly original or anything, but it is something that, I enjoyed, and I didn't have problems with the ending. I mean, I think that the ending worked fine in the sense of the way that the story played out.
Okay. No, go ahead, Tommy.
No, I agree for the most part with Andy. I was surprised, and maybe it's just because of the last not Catching Fire movie. What are those called? Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Which ended on such a huge cliffhanger. I was surprised. Like, I kind of was wondering what's next for this film.
Yeah.
I felt like this film could have ended because they spent so much time on the training that the mind control and all that stuff would be book 2. Like, I was really surprised.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we just did that, and you threw a knife in Kate Winslet's hand, and we're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all good. Okay, so now we're taking a train to Nowheresville, and that was my first thought. And then the person that I was with was like, "No, there's this and that and this and that," and that makes sense. But the first thing was like, "Oh," I kind of felt like we were good.
Well,
They exposed everything.
Sorry.
Yeah.
My first reaction was they don't have a backup of the computer program.
No, it was just when you put a knife through the monitor.
Oh.
It just everything.
No, when you
dies.
force
No,
her to delete the program.
I know.
Well, and then 4 walks up and apparently is immediately an expert at the interface.
Well,
Well,
they're
and
lucky he was around.
I have to say that was one of the things that was missing. They again, as you referenced earlier, Mike, you said that he works in surveillance or security or whatever. So in the book, there's more with him. There's some scenes with him in sort of that control room. That's his job when he's not working with the initiates. He's there in that area, and so that's something for people that have read the book. It's like, oh, okay, and it's one of those things that you've got to just get to in the film. You can't spend too much time, and so yeah, it's he's an experienced leader in that. So yes, he's clearly has to be adept with the technology. So you accept it and you move on.
Steve, you have said this a number of times, and I think it's a really important question that and this is not something we need to address, but maybe it's worthy for a blog post. Like, if we reached a period where these adaptations are so fruitful that we just have to operate on the assumption that you've read the book.
And that's why I mean, the fact that Tom and Andy enjoyed the film, I think it would enrich your experience, just as reading Lord of the Rings, or The Hobbit you're gonna get that extra stuff to that.
The Hobbit ain't going to help you. The Hobbit ain't going to help you with the Hobbit movie.
Peter Jackson's Hobbit.
I mean, the freaking Hobbit was like a pamphlet compared to what he's doing.
Well, or Harry Potter. I mean, I think that's the risk, or even Hunger Games of. Is it strong enough to stand on its own? And then reading the book enriches that because you're sort of seeing the things that are hinted at or suggested at, or you're understanding some of the underlying motivations. And that's where I think this one sort of falls in between, because it had to make some choices in paring down the material. It had to sacrifice some things, and it's probably not as strong a film as I had hoped for. I think it's still enjoyable, and I think that, we'll see over the next couple of weeks how the box office holds up, if it's a film that stands on its own, or if it's something that really depends on, being familiar with the book. But I think the fact that half the film board here is saying they had an enjoyable experience, bears that out somewhat.
Oh, I'm sure it'll do very well.
Let me tell you this, and I'll give, this is my wife and I were, making snide comments about it throughout the movie. We were humoring ourselves. And we could not ignore the fact that at the end of the movie, the entire rest of the audience clapped and cheered.
Why not?
And more importantly, throughout the movie, there were several moments when there were the "You go, girl," and "Yeah, that's the way you do it" were yelled out audibly.
What theater? You were clearly in a theater for like a sitcom audience.
He forgot to mention the striptease dancer.
Dude, we were the oldest people there.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to mention this. I thought that was very interesting. I saw the first showing. It was an 11:30 in the morning showing on Friday, and I was one of the very youngest people there. I mean, I was in an audience where it looked like the audience had been brought in on a bus, and they were. I mean, it was like, the blue-haired. This was the Monuments Men thing. I mean, this was the film made for grown-ups audience. I was really surprised.
Were they all shouting, "That's what those kids are doing to this world"?
Were they like, "Well,
reap what you sow"?
Or did they say, "You go, girl"?
This is not Downton Abbey.
I thought it was really fascinating that happened. So, anyhow, we're doing sort of closing comments. We got to wrap this up. But I really felt, I think I'm really baffled by this film, and structurally, I found it really very weak. I did enjoy most of the characters in the film. I thought the actors did just a fine job. But I'm going to think more on this, Steve, and I think I need to probably read the book. I am going to have to see the movie again this week because I wasn't able to take my daughter, and she's really very upset with me. So I'll see it again, and who knows? Maybe this will change my mind. I wonder if you'll
find that more infectious, because I definitely found it infectious with the amount of tween girls and stuff, of just like when 4 shows up, they are like, ooh, you can feel like their minds not being able to understand or accept what their body is telling them, like all these things. Like some of that was kind of, and then just talking incessantly.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like it wasn't annoying. It was kind of like, well, it's not for me. I'm the creep.
Right.
Yeah, you are the creep.
I'm sitting like
you're the guy who should have a restraining order.
Yeah. Does anyone know where my puppy is?
I got a survey.
Yeah.
but like Steve said, do you have to read the book to watch the movie? Shouldn't the movie be able to stand by on its own?
I think so.
Me,
and this is a very
alone.
frustrating place where we are right now with these adaptations. I think that assumption is not. I think they are separate media, and it's very frustrating.
Well, and I'll be completely honest with you. Even though there's no book associated with it, I got the same feeling with Prometheus. There was the yada 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 type of screenwriting, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, we just need to get to this point, and we don't really need to, carry along. It's like all the people, the target audience knows what they're trying to do, and they're not really concerned about the details that sort of make it fall down. They're like, but she wants to see his tattoo. I'm like, oh my God, really? But that was like dripping, and that was that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I needed to see his tattoo with those little things on his neck. I wanted to see what was under there.
Well, you should have asked him.
Who's the creep now?
Hey, do we have any other specific points we want to raise before we rank this thing?
No, I don't.
No.
You mean last final comment?
Yes. Well, have we made final comments, or do we need to do that again?
I just think it was. I enjoyed this story in the sense of, this is a story about a girl who is struggling to find her who she is, and I mean, personally, I got to say, I enjoyed this movie much more than the first Hunger Games movie, which I could never connect with Katniss and her boyfriend and the other guy and her little love triangle. I had no interest in any of that. I haven't read the books for any of these, so I'm speaking strictly from the film standpoint. I will say I enjoyed the second Hunger Games much more than this one.
Oh, sure.
But I enjoyed this much more than the first Hunger Games film.
I agree 1,000%. That's more than 100.
So if they make a second one of this or whatever,
it's already in pre-production.
Yeah.
Right. So when they make that, I would predict, not even know anything about it, I would predict you would have the same reaction, because this in my opinion, this is the Prometheus of the Aliens world. This is a or this is episode 1 of Star Wars.
It's an origin story.
It's man. This backstory stuff is horrible. There's no real way to do it. Let's just throw it in a movie, get them to watch it, and then the next movie will be the one where they actually capitalize on it.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I will say, I felt like Neil Burger was probably not the right director for this, because just like the first Hunger Games film, I just felt like, I can't remember who directed that, but I just felt like he was not the right director. In both cases, I felt like they picked a director who didn't have the right filmmaking prowess to make something that needed the type of filmmaker that it needed. This felt like it needed somebody who was going to be able to handle the action a lot better. Like some of the action scenes, I did feel were real sloppy. I couldn't get into them very much. I was like, okay, it's a little jarring the way you're moving things around. I'm not quite sure what's going on. And sometimes it was so broad, it did feel a little more just kind of TV filmmaking, which, kind of what you were saying about that end, Pete, how it felt a little bit kind of flat. But I'm hoping that they pick a different director for the next one.
Oh,
it's funny how that always
are.
seems to happen. Because even Chris Columbus directed the first 2 Harry Potters.
Right.
And it got much better after that.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Neil, Mr. Berger is serving as producer on the second one because they had to start on pre-production for the sequel while they were still finishing up production on this first one. So he is not the director. I don't have in front of me who it is, but there will be somebody different directing it. I am hoping that, just as we saw with Hunger Games, it was Gary Ross that directed the first one, that we have someone that can really bring this world to life and take it up a level in the sequel.
I've got some good news, guys. It's me. Spoiler alert. This is the first announcement, and I really appreciate the notes.
It's actually Robert Schwenke who directed... I'm not sure this makes me feel any better.
Oh, no.
He did Flight Plan, The Time Traveler's Wife, Red, and R.I.P.D.
Oh,
You guys,
I liked Red.
We are totally hosed.
And he's scheduled to do the next 2, Insurgent and Allegiant.
No, I liked Red a lot.
I haven't seen...
after R.I.P.D. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand
Can
Hollywood.
I just say?
Yeah.
Can I just say the one thing, the little piece I thought was hilarious, or I mean, really awesome, was the part where they had Triss kneeling down, and they were gonna. There's 3 guys, 3 military trained killers, sitting there gonna offer, and they get shot from some guy in a grassy knoll.
That's Ashley Judd.
Well, no.
Yeah,
That's
right.
just it. So my first thought was like, man, somebody's got flipping snipers somewhere to just take him out, right? Because it was 3 shots, wiped out. And then her mom's running with a handgun from 200 yards out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, she's a good shot.
She is actually a robot. That's a faction we didn't hear about. That comes in the second book.
That's part of the... See, that's the thing. It's like Divergent. But
Yeah.
they're not superpowered. She's a Divergent.
I wanted superpowers so badly.
I will
That's
say...
the sharpshooter faction that wasn't represented.
Right.
I do have notes from Chad, who texted me a few notes.
Oh, yeah. What did he have
I'll
to
just
say?
read through these real quick because it's text. It's not very long. So here's what I thought up front. Dauntless seemed like a musical group that I was almost certain going to break into song every time they happily ran/tumbled/free ran.
I did think they were heavy in parkour.
That's very true.
Overall, the movie wasn't horrible. It just wasn't super new, I guess. I kept waiting for all of the quote-unquote bad guys to do a surprise character change, and they didn't. They stayed angry. And they all picked on the Stiff. Why? Because she's a pretty little nobody everybody wants to beat up. Forget the rest of the new people. Let's destroy the Stiff. Anyway, I was confused. Why those factions? Why not preposterous or absurd or profanity? And so
It's like he was in my head.
And so I guess if you... what's this mean? I guess if you are factionless, you become a homeless person. We have those now. That's the end of his notes. But
Okay.
I want to be in the profanity faction.
All right, gentlemen.
sounds
I
like
think we need to move into the ranking.
Okay.
And with that, we head over to Flickchart.
Yay.
yes, this is flickchart.com/TNR Film Board if you want to follow us there.
Now, see, I was going to do that, but that was supposed to be a toss.
Oh, I'm so... I
For
went to
crying out loud, you are a media professional.
Do it again. Do it again. Just say the word
All
again.
right. And now we need to head over to Flickchart.
Best one yet.
Do it one more time. This is going to be so worth it.
And
We'll fix this in post.
now we need to head over to Flickchart.
Flickchart! Flickchart! Put on your seatbelt. The show is off the rails! Not worth it.
Flickchart.com/ Oh, Andy already did it. You're already there. What is it again? TNR Film Board.
Yes, that's right.
That's the one. And let's go.
All right, Divergent or Cloud Atlas?
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas.
I would do Cloud Atlas.
Abstain.
I have to abstain as well.
Oh my goodness.
I just
It's on
can't.
It's on HBO right now. It's on my DVR.
What does abstain mean? You never saw it?
No, I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, they haven't seen it
with,
yet.
with Wachowskis.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Oh,
All
boy.
right. Okay, Divergent or The Wolverine?
The Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
Divergent.
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 Oh, my God.
I knew this was going to
Hey,
happen.
look at the. I mean that. We all talked about how Wolverine fell apart in the middle. Just went upside down, the typical boss battle, and it was just so cliche and bad. We had
Wolverine has 2 good scenes.
We did. We talked about all those things, and this movie was that much dumber.
Right.
No, you're right. 2 of you are wrong.
That's right. Divergent or 42?
42.
Divergent.
Divergent.
Abstain.
Excellent. All right.
Divergent is going up the charts.
Mike, this is for you. Divergent or Prometheus?
Prometheus.
I would do Divergent.
Oh, you guys are...
No, it has to be Divergent because it's there. You have stupid scientists in Prometheus.
No.
There's so many bad.
You have an entire stupid civilization in Divergent.
Look at the way. Look at this way. It's the same movie. Just Prometheus was just a little bit more awesome.
I don't know.
No,
not quite. All right, there we are. Divergent, number 11 out of 20.
Okay.
Really?
God, it didn't break the top 10.
Yes, it didn't.
That would have been my wall of shame. Gentlemen, as ever, I'd like to say I've learned a lot from you, but I have. I've learned a lot from you and about you, and I need to re-rank all of the movies that we've ever agreed on as a result.
And re-rank you as a person.
You're re-ranking our friendships.
Yes, that's right. Flickchart.com/Pete's Friends. Thank you, as ever, everybody, for showing up and talking about this film, and thank you, everybody out there listening to the Film Board. Around the Horn, Tommy.
Hello, thank you. What?
And Steve, thanks for showing up.
Thank you, as always.
And Uber Mevins.
I am not creepy.
Andy, man, we're still friends, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. This was great. Thanks, everybody, and we'll be
awkward hugs
at family reunions. We will be, if you want to find out more about us, make sure you head over to thenextreel.com. You can see all the Film Board films we've ever done, and make sure you catch up with us on iTunes. You can subscribe to the show for free. Make sure you don't miss a single episode of Movie Awesome. And, of course, join us on all of the social platforms to join the conversation. We appreciate that. I think that's it. On behalf of all of us, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you next time.
Man, he's like a professional.
No, that's right. You're gonna ruin my toss at the end. Is that where we're gonna do it?
The show is done!